And I think we'll get started. So, hello everyone. My name's Tina, a volunteer for the London Environmental Network. I'm so excited to hear from Mike Bloxham about residential solar energy. I know that I'll learn a lot from this event, and I hope that you do as well. So, we'll be starting the session with a land acknowledgement. So, again, thank you for coming out tonight. We would like to begin by acknowledging the history of the traditional territory and honor the longstanding relationships of the three local First Nations of this land and place in southwestern Ontario. The three longstanding Indigenous groups of this geographical region are the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Lenapeewuk. We would also like to recognize the three First Nations communities down River Deshkanzibi, also known as the Thames River and Antler River, which are the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. We strive to work with these communities to continue to listen, learn, and restore the natural area back to its original beauty, support environmental initiatives, and help our communities become climate resilient. And I'm going to pass it on to Priya now.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Priya, and I'm the Environmental Program Development Specialist at London Environmental Network. This webinar on your guide to solar energy for your home is one of many that will offer, focusing on how you can make your home more climate friendly. We're working on a program called Greener Homes London to support Londoners in retrofitting their homes and making lifestyle changes to lower our carbon footprint. So just looking at this chart here, you can see that personal vehicles and housing are the largest categories of emissions in London. And so it's kind of empowering to know that you can make changes within those categories and have a big impact. So we just launched the Greener Homes London program, and this webinar is part of the community engagement side of it. But on top of that, we'll be offering virtual one-on-one calls with Londoners to help you make your home climate friendly. So whether you have questions about retrofit grants that are available or just want to make small changes in your household that affect energy, water, waste, transportation, or biodiversity, our staff will be able to help you. So if you're interested in scheduling a home checkup call with us, you can sign up using the link in the chat. And put in the code free checkup to get your home checkup at no cost, or you can scan the QR code that's on the screen right now. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our expert speaker, Mike Bloxham. So Mike got his start in solar energy over 20 years ago, working with a manufacturer of solar water heaters on stimulating solar performance based on geographical location and site conditions. After graduating from the University of Waterloo in computer science, he acted as a project manager at the same manufacturer where he developed a patented system for controlling solar water heaters during the creation of a proprietary digital controller with wireless monitor. In 2009, he co-founded Suntap Technologies to install solar energy systems for pool heating, water heating, and electricity generation. Over the years, solar lighting and EV charging stations have been added as offerings, as well as conducting green assessments for buildings. With hundreds of solar installations under his belt, Mike's expertise in solar energy is hard to beat. In addition to his business, Mike volunteers his time with environmental causes, such as working on the board of Reforest London since 2015 and serving on the City of London's Advisory Committee on the Environment since 2012. He also works on the board of London Region Branch of Architectural Conservancy Ontario and South Collegiate Alumni Association, and serves on the London Advisory Committee on Heritage. Mike's community volunteerism began at the London Food Bank in 1999, and in 2016, he was hired to coordinate the fresh food programs. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and let our expert speaker, Mike, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Priya. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And I'm just going to share my screen, assuming I can get the right one here. And there, that should be showing our splash screen, I hope. And yeah, so welcome everybody. Thank you for coming this evening. And thank you to the London Environmental Network for inviting me to be a speaker. I'm excited to be part of this Greener Homes London. It's something that's been near and dear to my heart for many years, so it's great to see some real collaboration between different sectors in the city to bring this together. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background about my company, Suntap Technologies. We were established in 2009, as Priya mentioned, and we provide sustainability options to London and the surrounding area primarily solar energy. We've also done some EV charging stations and some other green initiatives such as green building checkups. We'll call them an audit, but they're not an official energy audit. It's just a way for people to get an idea of how they could improve their building beyond just doing solar energy. But tonight, I'm here to talk to you about solar. So our focuses are on solar pool heating, solar hot water systems, solar electricity, and solar lighting. A little bit about me. Priya already did the Gramble, so I'll go over this pretty quick, but I've lived in London since I was 9. I went to South Secondary School, which is now called South Collegiate, and University of Waterloo. Got started in the solar industry in '98 and haven't looked back. And I'm an avid environmentalist and founded Suntap, almost 12 years ago. So solar technologies. A lot of people, when they think of solar, they think of solar, what we call solar PV, which is photovoltaics, generating electricity. However, there is a flip side to the radiation we get from the sun, which is also the thermal energy. So thermal energy is the heat energy that we get. That's what makes your skin burn on a sunny day like we've had recently. And then, of course, the light energy is what helps us see things, to put it in a simple term. So thermal energy we use to produce power for solar heating and solar cooling. And then, of course, light energy, as I mentioned, is for generating electricity, which is on a variety of scales, anything from, you'd be really familiar with a solar calculator, which have been around for decades, to solar lights, to up to full-blown solar electricity systems for powering buildings and neighborhoods. Thermal energy is still the most efficient method of energy production from the sun. I put some numbers here for some folks who might be interested. So on an annual basis, a solar pool heater will give you 41 kilowatt hours of energy per square foot, and a solar hot water system will generate roughly 93 kilowatt hours of energy per square foot. Compare that with photovoltaics, which is around 22 kilowatt hours per square foot. So if you have a huge roof and want to do all three, go for it. If you have a swimming pool and are trying to decide, do you want to make electricity or do you want to heat your pool? You probably better to heat your pool. You're going to get twice as much energy out of it, and it's also a whole lot cheaper. And of course, the king of solar really is solar domestic hot water. That's SDHW. It's 4 times more efficient than photovoltaics, and also better return on investment. So I would never say no. Someone wanted to do photovoltaics, of course, but I always encourage them to think about thermal first. It's actually a method of energy conservation in a way, rather than electricity generation, which is the megawatt concept, where it's better to not produce a kilowatt hour of energy rather than have to generate one. So we do the supply and installation of solar energy systems. We always come out and do an initial site assessment to make sure that the site is acceptable for solar. We supply the equipment, we provide the installation service. If there's any required maintenance on the system, we do that as well. And we do residential and commercial systems. The applications are pretty wide ranging. Residential homes are primarily where we work, including multi-unit buildings and rental units. Commercial buildings could include offices, restaurants, hotels, fitness centers. Anywhere that uses a lot of hot water is ideal when we're talking about thermal. Of course, anywhere with a south-facing unshaded rooftop is great for solar electricity. Industrial buildings that use a lot of energy are great applications. They often have large unobstructed roofs that are otherwise just collecting rainwater. So why not plant a solar array on the roof? Same with institutional buildings, public schools, hospitals, public pools, hospitals and schools. And agricultural, such as dairy operations and poultry, use a lot of hot water, and they're ideal for solar thermal. So things to consider as a homeowner. You want to go out and look at your roof before you call anybody. You want to go out and look at your roof. See where you think you want your collectors to go. If you're looking at a rooftop that's facing anywhere towards north, between east and west, probably not ideal. You're not going to get a great amount of solar energy on anything that's trending toward the north. Unless you have a very, very low slope, it might be okay for a pool heater, but you won't get great production out of anything else. Rooftop versus racking. If you end up determining your roof is no good, do you have room in your backyard for a rack? Could you build something where you could mount the collectors and run your wiring or your tubes to the house? Tilt and azimuth. So those are fancy words for the orientation of the panel. So the tilt is from laying flat on the ground to being straight up and down 90 degrees on a wall. And then of course, most rooftops will fall somewhere in between. And then the azimuth is how it faces the sun. So whether it's due south, facing east, facing west, or somewhere in between there. While I say south is ideal, anywhere between southeast and southwest, you're only losing minimal performance on a solar electric system. And anywhere between east and west, as long as you've got good exposure for a solar thermal system, you're only losing maybe 5 to 6% if you weren't due south. So not as huge a consideration for thermal. But we always want to optimize a solar array's orientation. So if you have a rooftop that is between that southeast to southwest sweet spot and is somewhere between 15 to 45 degrees tilt, then you're ready to go. Unless there's shading. So you always want to watch out for shading. Trees that could grow larger in the next 4 to 5 years, you want to make sure that you take that into consideration. Existing trees, a neighbor's house, a potential new build nearby, all these things you want to make sure you're aware of before you decide to invest in a solar system. And of course, seasonal use versus year-round. So if it's a seasonal use like a swimming pool, you might not mind if there's some shading from the east and west in the other times of year, as long as you got a good exposure kind of from May to September. And if you're doing a year-round system, you kind of want to make sure that you're going to be mostly unobstructed. So I'll start with solar pool heating. It is the most cost-effective way to heat a pool, hands down, no argument. If you're using gas or electricity, you're going to be paying way more than if you do a solar pool heater. So effectively, the cost to run a solar pool heater for 25 years is 2 cents per kilowatt hour. You can't touch that with any other technology. That's why it's such a fast payback. If you compare it versus an existing gas or electric heater, you're going to get a return on investment of about 45%, which there's nowhere else in the world you're going to get that kind of return. You can extend your pool season by 2 months or more at no extra cost, basically, because you can open your pool in early May, hopefully after the last hard frost. And a lot of my clients have their pools open till Thanksgiving, believe it or not. They used to close on Labor Day weekend because it would get cold at night. They lose all their heat, but because the solar is free, they keep their pool open for a few more weeks, and they can have their Thanksgiving dinner with their family and then have a pool party afterwards. I've had many clients who've been very happy to tell me about those parties. And of course, these systems, they can accommodate any size of pool. So anything from an 18-foot round above ground pool up to a 20 by 40 in-ground pool. And it's all customizable based on how warm you want it. So how a solar pool heater works. The panels are installed on a roof usually, sometimes a rack, again, if there's not enough roof space, to collect the solar energy. Pipes run from the existing pool pump to and from the solar panels. And when there is solar energy, the cold pool water is pumped up into the panels to be heated by the sun. And then that warm water returns into the pool. And this is all based on an automatic system. So there is a temperature sensor on the roof. There is a temperature sensor in the pool water. And then if the roof is warmer than the water, it will run until you hit your temperature. which most people set somewhere between 83 to 85 Fahrenheit. And it will also make sure that the system doesn't run at night so that you're not accidentally sending heated water up onto your roof and losing heat into the atmosphere. So as I mentioned, 45% return on investment with a solar pool heater. And this is why right here, because natural gas and electricity are fuel sources that you have to constantly be paying for. And then those heaters only last 5 to 10 to 15 years if you're lucky, because they're used so infrequently, rather seasonally. Bugs and rodents and other critters like to get inside and make homes in there during the off season, and it just causes them to break down quicker. There's more maintenance with them. Solar has a fuel cost of zero because you're not paying to run it, except for the cost of the pool pump, which is already which you're already running anyway. So we say it's between 1.8 to 2.3 cents per kilowatt hour to operate the system over the 25-year lifetime. So solar domestic hot water. It's the most efficient way for to do solar year-round. The 25-year fuel cost, again, less than 13 cents per kilowatt hour. You pay more than that on average with electricity right now. So if you're using an electric hot water heater at home, replacing it with solar is an ideal situation for you. It has a fast payback. It's 8.6% return on investment. So you can't get that on the stock market, at least not guaranteed. And it will provide over 60% of your hot water needs throughout the year. So generally from June till August, you're going to get 100%. In the shoulder seasons, you're going to get somewhere between 60 to 80%, and then in the winter time, you get more 30 to 40% of your hot water will come from the solar. I've had reports of solar water heaters working at night when in the colder seasons, when we have a little bit of a warm spell. The water coming into the house is still around 5 to 6 degrees Celsius, and outside it's 20 degrees in April, and it'll run and collect that heat and put it into the water, which is a lovely thought that you can have a solar energy system working in the nighttime. And of course, these systems are also scalable for a large range of applications. So how it works, very similar to the pool heating. We put panels on the roof or on a rack to collect the energy. Piping runs to and from the collectors. And when solar energy is available to collect, the cold fluid gets pumped out. It gets heated up by the panels, and then the warm solar heated fluid comes back inside into a heat exchanger, and it gets transferred into a tank. And that cycle just keeps going until your tank gets fully charged or you run out of solar energy to collect. And generally these work as preheat systems. So your existing water tank becomes your backup, and the solar storage tank becomes your primary source of hot water. That means the backup tank will only run when it needs to. For example, in December, where you're only getting maybe 30% of your energy from the solar, the other 70% is still done by your backup tank. So you can't completely eliminate your existing water heater. So as I mentioned, there's a generous return on investment with solar hot water systems. Depending on your fuel type, you're going to get a better return on investment. Like I mentioned, electricity has a better ROI for solar thermal, and tanks for gas and electric tend to last 10 to 15 years. Because the solar tank is not using the components, they tend to last a lot longer. And the system itself should last 25 years and provide you with hot water that whole time. No loss in performance. Nothing like photovoltaic systems that do degrade over time. And of course, again, lots of applications for solar hot water, residential, including multi-unit, student rentals. Places that use a lot of hot water are excellent candidates, like restaurants and laundries, fitness centers, food and beverage, and industrial cooling are great applications for solar. Institutional buildings, again, government buildings, hospitals, schools, places that are constantly using hot water. And agricultural buildings, again, because of the high hot water needs for those operations, they are excellent candidates for solar hot water. So finally, the sexy solar application. Solar electricity is the one that gets all the news and all the buzz. Now, because there's no more feed-in tariff program, we can't sell our energy to the grid as we used to between about 2009 till 2017, 2018, when the feed-in tariff program was running. So now people can sell their energy into the grid when they have excess, if they're able to get on a net metering system, and I'll go over this in a minute. Or you can have a battery system that would store the electricity and then get used in the house. So the fuel cost, again, is lower than what you would pay for electricity out of the grid right now, either way, over 25 years. So a grid tie system these days is going to be net metering. So net metering is when you produce electricity from your solar system, it feeds into the grid if you aren't using it, and then it rolls your meter back. So if you end up with a negative meter reading, you get a credit on your hydro bill. And then in the winter, for example, when you're not producing as much solar, you get to use up that credit to pay your hydro bill down. So it's not like the old feed-in tariff where you were on a contract, you had a set rate that you sold into the grid. This is it nets it out through your existing meter. You can also have battery storage, which is collecting all the energy directly from the solar collectors, and then your house or building uses the energy coming out of the batteries as needed. You can also do a hybrid model between a battery storage and a net metering, where you charge up your batteries first, and then if your batteries are charged, you sell the rest into the grid. And say if you're on the time of use billing, you can also set up your system so that if the batteries aren't charged at night, you charge them up with the lowest rate, the overnight rate, the low peak, and then you can use that energy during the day during the high peak, and you're saving on your electricity there as well without using solar. So there's a nice compatibility there. Off-grid applications are great for remote places, or even some new builds where Hydro One will charge you roughly $20,000 to install a hydro pole and get you hooked up to the grid. Some people would rather spend that $20,000 to be completely self-sustainable and do solar that will power them throughout the year. And of course, these systems are scalable for a large range of applications. As I mentioned before, you have small solar lights up to something that powers a pump in a well, up to a household, up to up to the picture here, which is a solar farm. So how it works, again, we're absorbing the light energy in this instance. We install the panels on the roof or a rack to collect that energy. The modules are excited by the light energy and causes the electrons to move back and forth, generating DC electricity. And then the inverters convert that to AC electricity for immediate use in the household. If you're exporting to the grid on net metering, it goes through the existing meter, so you don't have to worry about installing a second meter, which was the case under feed-in tariff. And if you're using battery storage, charge the batteries up if there's currently no demand, and then any excess can also be, as I mentioned, sent to the grid if you're net metering. And once the batteries are charged, and if there's no draw in the household, then and if you're not on net metering, for example, doing an off-grid, then we cut off the production from the solar panels until the need arises again. And yeah, as I mentioned, that's it for the off-grid. If you're on a battery bank, and you can save it for future use or use it as it's generated. So solar electricity does have a longer return on investment now as a result of virtually no subsidies at the moment. There is the new federal program, but I haven't calculated that in here because it's still a little murky on on the exact amounts. But if you do a grid tie with net metering, you're looking at about 7.8 cents per kilowatt hour is what you're paying to generate that electricity over 25 years, which is roughly half the average right now if you're buying from the grid. So it still is a good investment. You're more like a 5% return on investment as opposed to the other two forms of solar. And these systems all pretty much have 25-year warranties on the components. So everything from the inverters to the modules. So you're going to see some degradation though in the performance over the years. So that's the only thing to consider. If you're doing battery only, no net metering, you're paying 12.4 cents. Still not bad, still less than the going rate. And again, that's the 25-year cost. So that's from today until 25 years from now. You're not going to see any inflation. Today it might be half the price of grid energy. 25 years from now, it might be a quarter. So solar electricity is still a great investment if you're looking to produce energy in your home. So solar lighting, we have these excellent solar lights that we love. They are fully water submersible. They've got 10-year warranty on them. 5-year warranty on them, 10-year life expectancy basically. I've had some that have been running for 11 years now, and then they're still as bright as they were on day one. So I'm really a fan of these. They use the light energy. Again, they're just a little PV module with a lithium battery, and you can use them in a wide variety of applications. You can put them in your garden or on your deck as opposed to putting in wired lights, which often requires a bit of digging and then ongoing maintenance as wires get dug up by the squirrels or the groundhog. And they're also portable, so you can stick them down if you want in place, but you can also pick them up and move them around if you decide to change how you want to lay out your yard. And I had one fellow buy one to put at the top of his sailboat. So he had a light, I guess, that he was able to remotely turn on and off. Stopped working. He saw my lights and it worked like a charm for him, because it just comes on when he needs it to when it gets dark, and turns off again in the morning. They're all automatic. So I mean, I imagine you're here because you want to know why to go solar. You're probably already thinking about it, but just to give you some things to consider if you hadn't already. Of course, number one reason most people want to go solar is to save money on their energy bills. So you're displacing traditional energies that are produced by currently natural gas, nuclear, and coal, or not coal anymore, hydro in Ontario. And the other advantage is you're generating your own clean energy as locally as possible. And for some people, that can get them toward what I call utility freedom. So for example, in our household, we don't have natural gas anymore. We got rid of natural gas 6 years ago. We replaced our dying gas furnace with an air source, a fan coil, and it draws hot water from our hot water system and disperses that through the house as a means of heating the house. And we have a solar hot water system coupled in with it, so our house is powered by solar in the winter to heat it. So we only pay one utility bill, and we have no combustion in the house. It's a way to help the environment. You're reducing greenhouse gases, reducing particulate pollution, reducing the need for the mining of uranium and drilling of natural gas and all the other nasty things that come with fossil fuels. We're also reducing dependence on foreign energy. So petroleum that comes from overseas, like in Eastern Canada, most of our petroleum comes from the Middle East. It's a way to make ourselves a sustainable country by producing our own electricity locally, or our own energy, I should say. We can help support Ontario's manufacturing sector. All of our products are manufactured in Ontario primarily. So the solar panels and the piping are all Ontario made, and so we're supporting the local economy. It increases the resale value of your property. Most people think, oh well, what if I don't like the way it looks? Well, if you show somebody how low their utility bills can be, that is a great reason to increase the sale value of your home. If you can say you'll pay less on your hydro bill over the next 20 years. And of course, you can feel good about integrating nature's energy into your life. So thank you very much. I love closing with this one. When there's a huge solar energy spill, it's just called a nice day. So I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Thank you so much, Mike. Again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to comment them in the chat box. We actually already have a few questions for you, Mike. So Tammy asked if you can you heat hot tubs with solar, or is it just pools?
Yeah, hot tubs are tricky. They require a lot of electricity to heat their water up. So you could potentially preheat it by taking that water from the hot water tank, in which case you could do a solar hot water system to do your preheat. But you can't use like a solar pool heating system, wouldn't work because it just doesn't get up to those high temperatures that a hot tub requires.
Awesome. And Steve has asked, what about solar roof shingles? Are they a possibility?
Yes, so they've been they've been teased in Canada for about I'm going to say about 11 years now. When Dow Chemical was first introducing their solar roof tiles, and they kept saying, "Oh yeah, they're coming, they're coming, they're coming," and then Tesla came along and said, "We're going to do it." And then they went and tested in Australia instead of in Canada. So we're still waiting for them to come here. There are some technologies, they're kind of integrated with the roof. So instead of putting the shingles down, you do a large array of the integrated solar, and then you do your shingling or whatever roof sheathing you want around it. And it is a possibility. It's just they've not really caught on as much as the roof mount. If you have an existing roof that you are replacing, that's a great time to consider doing an integrated solar panel. But if you replaced it 2 or 3 years ago, might as well just do a traditional mounted system.
Okay, and next question. Tyler has asked, can you, I actually don't know what these quite stand for, but I think that you will. Can you integrate SDHW with a tankless heater, and what is the typical retention time of the water in a solar pool heater?
Oh, good questions, Tyler. Okay. Yes, you can do a solar hot water system with a tankless heater. It just has to be configured so that it will accept certain ranges of the water coming out of the solar, or a way to temper the water down a bit, because a lot of tankless heaters are expecting the water to come in at a certain temperature, and if it's coming in too hot, it won't fire at all. Or if it's coming in just a bit below what it's expecting, it still won't fire, and you might not get the hottest water that you're actually expecting. So it is completely possible. You just have to check the specs of your tankless heater, and if not, then there are ways to do a mixing valve to bring in a cooler temperature. It means your heater will have to work a little more, but it means you'll always get that hot water you're expecting. And as for the second question about retention time, so a solar pool heater, typically it'll raise the temperature of the pool about 2 to 3 Fahrenheit per day. So it takes about 7 to 10 days to get your pool up to temperature. But after that, the solar will kind of keep it at that temperature. Of course, it all depends on the weather and the site conditions. But once you, if you have your system installed, you open up in early May, you could be swimming by May 2-4, and then it'll keep you warm right through till, I love to say, Thanksgiving. So.
Awesome. And then Han has asked, are the batteries covered by the warranty?
Batteries have their own warranty. They are typically not 25 years like the modules and the inverters. They range anywhere from 5 to 10 years, depending on the style of battery. I think I saw one more question up here, Tina. Will the installation of solar panels cover over a steel roof void the 50-year roof warranty? Can solar energy generation provide enough to charge an electric car? From David. So it depends on the company that installed the steel roof. Some of them will cover it if you consult with them first and get their specs on how to install the solar. So it really is all up to the company that did the installation. I've worked with a couple that have, and then there have been others that don't want to hear about solar at all. So that's when I've had to work with the homeowner to ensure that that what we do is not going to void the warranty. There are methods of attaching to the metal roof itself as opposed to puncturing through. It all depends on the style of the metal roof though. And as for enough to charge an electric car, it depends on the consumption needs of the electric car, but you could probably do a small solar electric system to do that for sure.
Awesome. And Calvin has asked, how is the panel mounted onto the roof?
Okay. Well, I'll go over all three technologies. How about that? The solar pool heaters are leg screws that go through nylon straps that hold the top header down, and that keeps everything in place. And then we also put cross straps across the panels to keep them from flapping in the wind. And that's all sealed with a rubberized roof sealant. So once it goes into the roof, it hardens up. Well, not hardens all the way, but it comes out really soft and then it gets less soft. But that prevents any water from penetrating into the attic. For solar hot water systems and solar electric, we typically use a mounted rail or a C-channel rack that the collectors sit in. Those racks are attached to the roof, typically on every roof joist, depending on the spacing of the joists and if it's trussed or if there are a lot of things to consider. But we use leg screws, larger leg screws for those, and they're mounted right into the roof members.
Awesome. And just some 4 more questions. If my roof gets a lot of shade from trees, what are my options, or do I have any? And is it better to leave the trees and not get solar, or cut off branches of the trees and that share the roof?
Well, I would always advocate to save a tree and figure out your solar later. Trees probably give you more benefit, honestly, than installing solar. You might be able to just put a smaller system on if you really love the trees. If they could withstand some trimming, then by all means, away from the house. And as I mentioned, if you have enough space, say in your yard, that'd be a great opportunity to build a rack and install your collectors there, and then we can run piping or wiring between the collectors to the house, and then you avoid the whole roof tree shading situation. Oh, sorry, Tina.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I also got a direct message from Joan.
Oh, okay.
And Joan asks, have any changes been made to a roof installation re difficulty fighting a house fire? I'm not sure. I'm not. Could you clarify, Joan, please? See, she's typing. I know that in the past there were issues. Yes, okay. So there were changes about 7 years ago to the code that you had to have a shut off that the fire department would be able to turn off as soon as they got on site, and also that the local fire department is aware that you have a solar electric system. So that way, if there is a fire in the building, when they arrive, they know where to go, they know what to do. Most systems that use microinverters, if there's a disconnection from the grid, then they automatically stop producing electricity. But I think fires as a result of solar have been extremely rare. There was an issue with Tesla's technology there a few years ago in the States, but yeah, thankfully it's not a common occurrence, but it's always good just to let the fire department know if you have a system. And then if it's not set up the way they like it, then they'll let you know how they prefer it.
Great. And then another question, will solar panels still work at the same efficiency during winter months?
So solar, solar hot water system will work at the same efficiency. They're actually a little more efficient when it's colder, because they're getting like the winter heat is less, but they actually work really well when they're cooler. It's kind of contrary to what you would think. Sorry, solar electric. Solar electric works better when it's cooler. They are rated at 25 degrees Celsius, and if you get hotter than that, their production is less, and if you're cooler than that, their production is much better. So the cooler you can keep the solar electric panel, the better, than a really muggy day in July. A solar hot water system works better with the heat, obviously, but they're fully insulated, so they capture about 96% of the thermal energy that comes in, so they're highly efficient.
Perfect, thank you. And Jan and Trevor have asked if you install systems in the Waterloo region.
It's been a while since I've been down to Waterloo, but we would entertain that, sure.
And just some more questions. What are the major cons of using solar energy for heat or electricity?
The major cons?
Yeah.
I don't know. I only think about the pros. I suppose one con would be, as long as we're talking about roof, when you go to replace a roof, you typically have to take the system down. So I've done a number of these where folks have installed their solar panels, and then their roof has just come up where it's time to be replaced. So we need to remove all the equipment, decommission it, make sure it's all sealed off for the roofers to come do their work. And then when the roofers are finished, we have to come back and put everything back on and hook everything back up and retest it. So if you're considering solar and you need a new roof in the next 2 to 3 years, do your roof first. That's certainly important for people to know.
Perfect. And then last questions, unless anybody else has any other questions for Mike. What is the difference in installation price for using a battery versus connection to meter?
Okay, so it depends on the size of the system and how many batteries. So the incremental cost with a net metering system versus a battery system it's usually around $10,000 to $20,000 just for the batteries. Again, depending on the size. That's an average, average size system. So it can be a lot, but as you saw from the numbers, in the long term, it will be financially viable for your home. But if you can get a grid tie, definitely do it, and then you can always do the batteries later down the road if you want to do one of the hybrid systems.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. I think that wraps up our Q&A period. I'm just going to hand it over to Priya now for some closing remarks.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Tina. So I just want to say thank you to everyone here, the speakers, volunteers who helped organize this event, and thanks to all of you for your questions and active participation. Our last thanks goes to our sponsors. We also have a short feedback survey we'd like all attendees to fill out so we can keep improving our events. So we're just going to link that in the chat. And that's everything for tonight. So thank you, everyone. Please fill out the feedback survey. You'll also get it in an email, and you'll also get the event recording in your email as well if you want to refer back to it.